Let me simplify the concept of dependent clauses, independent clauses, and complex sentences. Now, dependent clauses, just as the name implies, these are clauses that are dependent on other clauses. They themselves cannot make any meaningful sense until another clause is added to them. Hence, they are called dependent clauses. On the other hand, independent clauses, these are clauses that are independent, that do not rely on any other clause for them to make full sense. They are clauses that make complete sense on their own. They are sentences in themselves. Now, these dependent clauses can also be referred to as subordinate clauses. While the independent clauses be referred to as main clauses. Now, let's have illustration using examples. Within the course of the examples, we are going to explain complex sentences. Example 1. Let's have clause 1. It says, when I came in. Look at this. When I came in. If someone walks up to you and says, when I came in, this expression does not make any meaning. You may want to ask what happened when you came in, because the expression is lacking in meaning. Do you know why? Because this expression is a dependent clause. It needs another clause before it can make sense. So this is a dependent clause. Let's look at this sentence too. It says, she greeted me. This clause, though short, made up of just 3 words, makes full sense. She greeted me is a sentence of its own. It makes sense because this expression is an independent clause. It doesn't depend on any other clause before it can make full sense. Now, how do we make this dependent clause to make sense? Let us combine these 2 expressions together and see what we have. We're going to start with the dependent clause and then add the independent clause. And this gives us, when I came in, she greeted me. Good. This expression now makes full sense. It is now that the dependent clause communicates meaning. We can also combine the 2 clauses by starting with the independent clause. And this gives us, she greeted me when I came in. This is also a complete sentence with meaning. Now, note that when you begin the sentence with the dependent clause, there should be a comma before you write the independent clause. But when you start with the independent clause, there should be no comma before the dependent clause. Now, each of these 2 sentences you see here that is made up of both a dependent clause and an independent clause is called a complex sentence. So a complex sentence is a sentence that is made up of dependent clause and an independent clause. The dependent clause could be more than 1, could be 2, could be 3. Now, let's go to example 2. Clause 1. Even though I was nervous. Just imagine somebody comes to you and say, even though I was nervous. This expression does not make full sense. Something is missing, and you will definitely want to ask the person question to know what he is actually saying. It doesn't make sense because this expression is a dependent clause. It requires the assistance of another clause before it can make full sense. Let's look at clause 2. It says, I answered all the questions. Good. This is a complete sentence with full meaning. This is an independent clause. It makes sense on its own. How then do we make this dependent clause to have meaning? We cannot combine the 2 clauses. Let us start with the dependent clause so that we have, even though I was nervous, I answered all the questions. This sentence not makes complete sense. We cannot understand what this dependent clause was driving at. This sentence as you have it, that is made up of a dependent clause and an independent clause, is called a complex sentence. Now let's begin with the independent clause so that we have, I answered all the questions even though I was nervous. This also is a complex sentence and it makes full meaning. I guess you now understand dependent clauses, independent clauses, and the concept of complex sentences. Now, let me leave this for you as a simple exercise. A student walked into the classroom while the teacher was writing. This is a complex sentence. Now, here is the exercise. Kindly identify the dependent clause and the independent clause in this sentence. Leave your answer in the comment section. Thank you very much for watching.